Hello and welcome. My name is John Moberger. I am the Chief Digital Officer here at Ideagen, and today I am honored to introduce a PowerChat between Atul Tandon, the CEO of Opportunity International, and Renee McAlpin, the Manager of Edu Quality Program at Opportunity Edu Finance. Renee and Atul, welcome to Ideagen.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Thanks, John.
Thank you.
So, John, thanks again so much. And I have to thank Ideagen as well as George and the whole team for this opportunity. And welcome, Renee, to this conversation. So excited to have you with us. And we want to talk today about what to us, and I know for millions of school-going children across the developing world, has probably been one of the most remarkable innovations in the last decade, which is bringing quality, affordable education right at their doorstep, right? And I'm reminded, Renee, even today, after all these efforts, about 263 million children who should be in school across the world, principally in the developing world, are not in school. And I would say the number climbs to 500 million when we think about the quality of education. So, and we being a financial services nonprofit, our focus has been on livelihoods. It kind of stumbled into this because our clients were starting businesses, starting to earn good earnings, improve their livelihoods. They wanted good education for their children, and there wasn't that available. So Opportunity stepped into that, and now I think 10 years later, Renee, it's really been remarkable. 23 countries, 6.5 million children. Who have been benefited by these programs, right? Close to 500,000 loans, almost 15,400 schools being funded. It's really been a problem of the greatest untold stories of development aid to the most needy and the ones who have the most future ahead of them, right? So the question that I have first for you, why should people care that children get educated, especially poor children get educated? What difference does it make?
No, absolutely. Great question. We know education is the backbone to a lot of lifelong success. We know that a mother who knows how to read, her children are less likely to have better opportunities, lifelong opportunities. We know that human capital and education is the backbone to developing a society and economic opportunity for everyone. Education cuts across all sectors and is an equalizer and creates opportunity for everyone. And so it's massively important in crises as well as what we're seeing and facing now, ever so more important.
Thanks, Renee. Thanks so much. Now, I am going to digress a bit, right, from the questions, because I want the audience to get to know you first. Before they hear you, because I met you first in Kampala, right? We were visiting our school programs there, and you were in Kampala leading your team, providing, and we'll talk more about it, improving education quality in schools and slums in Kampala. Well, how did you get there? What led you to this life? First of all, tell us about Renee. I mean, it was so. I still am so excited, and I know you were. Stranded like the rest of us in the US right now. But how did you get to Kampala, and what got you excited about this work?
Yeah, no, great question. Yeah, I mean, education has always been something that I cared very much about. It's something that's given me opportunities that are far beyond anything I thought I would be doing when I was a kid. Being able to see the world and using that as a foundation to catalyze, my dreams. And seeing that was something that I wanted to invest in for others. I didn't feel good about taking advantage of these opportunities unless I saw that same thing for everyone else. And, I started, I've always been service oriented, and I ended up actually falling into an opportunity with the United States Peace Corps. I joined the United States Peace Corps because I wanted to serve. And I was assigned an education role. And that's when I directed my, efforts to education after really, really diving in and seeing what the need was, and seeing that I had the ability to have an impact in that space. So ever since then, kind of, taking that same trajectory through the global education sector to find where I had the greatest value add based on my skills and what I was able to do. So I've worked a bit, as a teacher. I was, working with, large scale programs, working on strategy for implementation, how to reach, the bottom of the pyramid, worked at the policy level, so a bit more macro. How can we have an impact on policy to ensure quality education is delivered to everyone? And now finding myself here mixing a little bit of everything that I've done to really find a way to really develop a program with the greatest amount of impact in an area where there's still a lot of need. And so about 2.5 years ago, joined this program, found myself in Kampala, helping Andrew McCusker, the head of Edu Finance, scale this program across now where we see 8 countries across Latin America, Africa, and Asia.
Thanks, Renee. What a story. Even I really am. It's been quite exciting to partner with you, get to good know you and see your work. So, tell us about, okay, we talk about, it's almost 15,400 schools, right? Millions of children being educated and have been educated. How did we get here? What is it that opportunity actually does to get education to these children? What happens? How do these schools come about? How do they get the financing in place? How are they run? Who are these children? Tell us a bit about that.
No, yeah, that's a great one. As you mentioned earlier, we still see nearly 300 million children that are still out of school, close to 500 million that aren't learning, that have access but are not learning. And while we've made significant progress in the last 10, 20 years, there's still a lot of work to be done. And as you mentioned, opportunity being financial services saw, organically entrepreneurs, community leaders stepping up and opening schools to meet this demand. And so that's kind of how Edu Finance, the program that I work for, developed about 10 years ago, is really partnering with that local effort. So entrepreneurs opening affordable private schools to meet the demand of those who are still unschooled or those who are not receiving a quality education. Governments in low and middle income countries where we operate in have taken significant strides to reach everyone, but has still not been able to meet that demand. So we're coming in to fill the gap, while these systems are still developing and are still growing to create access to everyone. And so the core part of our program, which we started with, was providing access to finance to this local effort to help expand it and catalyze what they're already doing. So we work currently, we started with one financial institution. Now we're working with 58 across 23 countries, providing support to develop, financial products that are geared to the education sector, helping support with market analysis and training to financial institutions so that they can better serve this affordable private school sector that is really, in many countries where we operate, serving upwards of 50% of school-going children.
Yeah, thanks for that. Yeah, I remember, Renee, this was in my travels. I was in Ghana, in a suburb of Accra called Tema, right? Like one of the major universities within the University of Ghana is based there. Well, we went to this little school, and I'll mispronounce the name, but Helena Akiti, she had moved into that community about a decade back, and saw kids walking on the street when they should be in school. And she said, why? Well, there aren't enough local schools, enough seats available. So she took upon herself to start the school, and actually approached Opportunities Bank in Ghana for a loan opportunity, savings and loan in Ghana. And we gave her a loan, and she started the Samalena International School. And now it's right from kindergarten, starts in kindergarten, and her school now goes through junior high, and she's got 200 children. And I think it's those stories that you see repeated, right, in 15,400 schools, 28 countries. It's Helena in one place, and it's James in another place, and it's Lanero in another place who have taken upon themselves, local people. Said, okay, we are going to set these schools up because we want our kids to be educated. Well, then you don't stop there, right? We saw that the schools had been set up. Oh, well, how do you run the schools, right? What do you do with actually improving the management and the running of the school? What do you do about improving the quality of education of the children? So that's where then, in fact, the program that you lead started, Education Quality. So tell us about that, because on the one hand, we are providing both, expertise, startup expertise and ongoing, as well as startup capital to lenders to get into this, to lend into this market and increase the number of schools. But on the other hand, you're working directly with the proprietors and the school managers and the teachers and the heads of schools to improve quality. So tell us about this second leg, which I think is pretty unique. But it's in terms of innovation, was a big jump for a financial services nonprofit, but you guys did it. And here you are, and from everything I've seen, very successful. So tell us about that program.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of, the research and evidence we see behind microfinance is we know finance isn't enough just in itself, that, with training and support, relationship building and trust, people can go a lot further. And so, we entered the finance sectors. That was very natural and organic for us, and then started to see, that it's not just enough to provide finance, that we also need to make sure that the schools are actually providing a quality education. So Helena from Ghana, that she gets the support she needs to know how to run a successful school business, knows how to recruit the right type of teaching staff and to support them in their professional development, so that children, are able to achieve the learning outcomes that they need to move on in life and be successful. So the education quality program, as you mentioned, that I'm working on, we have about 40 people on our team across multiple countries and continents, and we provide the non-financial services directly to the schools who are borrowing from our partner financial institutions. And what we know, we work with two stakeholder groups specifically, and that's the school owner and the teachers. And what we know about the school owners in our program is they come from a diversity of backgrounds. Some of them have maybe owned other businesses and saw the need in education, and transferring their business acumen to the school sector, but maybe they don't know much about education or teaching and learning. Then we have former teachers who want to open their own schools because they see a need in their community, but don't know much about running a business. Then we see Helena, who sees a need, no background in business or education, and needs a little bit of support with both, right? And so when we focus on the school leader professional development, we're with a mixed bag here. So we provide support on how to run a successful business. So looking at business planning, financial management and budgeting, teacher recruitment and retention, plus many others. We also focus on the necessities of teaching and learning. So what does a school leader need to do to create the conditions for learning in their school, and so supporting their teachers to be successful. We also focus on professional development of teachers as well, so helping them really succeed. And what we see in this sector with teachers is often they don't really have the opportunity to pursue education training. They don't have the resources to get certified. So we come in and provide in-service training to really upskill and professionalize this teacher workforce that is serving half the population of school-going children in many of the countries where we work. And we, last but not least, one of the most important bits is we connect people to each other. We very firmly believe that people are stronger when they're working together. We see a lack of connection between school owners when we're all facing the same challenges and can really learn from each other in terms of what they're doing well. So our skilled education specialists to go out into the field, bring schools together in what we call clusters, so that they can support each other, collaborate, learn from each other, and have a stronger collective voice when they want to advocate for themselves at the policy level or any other elements which would help them really achieve their outcomes objectives.
Thank you so much. In fact, I remember when we visited in Kampala, you took me to the meeting of the Sunshine Cluster. I remember in a slum in Kampala, and we walked in there, and obviously it was a building with a tin roof, and I didn't tell you then, but it reminded me of my own school when I was going to school in India, in a very remote part of the country. Same tin roof, and here we are. Right, I walk in there, and my mind's thinking about my own school experience, and the head of school they were having the meeting. I remember. Renee in what he called his computer lab, well, and his library, both, right, in the room there. About 7-8 of your school proprietors were there. You were there, and your local staff member. His entire computer lab consisted of 4 broken laptops.
Mm-hmm.
Right? I think we have more working laptops in my home.
Mm-hmm.
And the library, I'm going to turn his entire school library was the size of one of the shelves of my own bookshelf, and he was so proud, and I, it both encourages you and breaks your heart at the same time, Renee. Seeing that is how much can these children and these school proprietors do with so little. And I remember asking me, he said, well, 5 books are required by according to regulation at the primary school level per child, and what the children can afford, the school can is 1 per child, right, if at all. And we tell you, you look at where how in fact fortunate we are, and then where these kids are in the schools, and how in the middle of that, with your guys' help, they are really putting it all back together. Very impressive. Your Pathways to Excellence program, very impressive. And you've codified the knowledge of all that you've gained about education quality and put it, I don't know what they are, how many there are. At that time, there were 30 different disciplines of practice.
Yeah, exactly. And I think it's important, when we talk about the qualities, to define what we mean by quality, which is pathways to excellence, and really helping the schools define what that means for their institution. So we have many indicators, as you mentioned. We started at actually 42, and we've brought it down to 18 of the most important ones through our experience thus far. But I think that's really key, because we can throw around that word quality a lot, but what does it actually mean? And actually, with the advent of the Sustainable Development Goals, that was a big push, moving from access to quality and defining what we mean about quality, setting global standards and local standards at the micro levels, so that schools can actually implement and actually make it achievable.
And and you bring up a good point. I mean, as we are pursuing sustainable quality education for all under the SDGs, here we are, right? You've got 15,000 schools and now close to about 6 million children who benefited, continuing to, as we sit here, stand here today. Currently, over 2.5 million children enrolled in those schools. It's been extraordinary. Well, and here you are, right, busy going about your program. And completely out of the blue, 10 weeks back comes COVID-19.
Yeah.
Right? And we all are still, frankly, wrestling, struggling, in shock, reacting, all of us, every one of us. There's nobody who's not. So tell us a bit about what's happened. To the teachers, to you.
I remember there was one weekend back in March where basically it felt like the world turned upside down, especially for the education sector. We just saw country after country after country where we operated in shut down and close their borders, which means closures of schools, closures of public gatherings, completely isolating, families, communities, individuals. And, I've worked through crises before, the Ebola epidemic in West Africa in 2014, where we saw massive school closures. But this, the difference with this is it's affected everyone in every corner of the globe, and the isolation as well, which means that there's not much we can do when a majority of our program had been, face-to-face. And so, this has, I think, like, the silver lining for this has been really seeing the commitment and the effort, of my team really coming together, our content developers, our staff, working night and day to really react to the current situation and find ways to really support our schools. But what keeps me up at night is the fact that we're going to lose about 10 years of progress, and that's the reality, and that not only in the education sector, but across the field. And everything's going to be affected, and it's going to be incredibly complex for us to address the challenges given the spillover effects and everything else, right? So, we keep hearing about schools reopening, are dependent on so many other sectors as well. Public transportation has to reopen for a lot of kids to get back to school. And so there has to be immense of coordination. And so that's what keeps me up at night. What keeps me going is just the dedicated team and staff, our schools as well, that are, looking for solutions. So yeah, our world did turn upside down on March 16th, for me specifically, when we saw about 90% of the world's schools shut down.
It's been quite an extraordinary journey the last 10 weeks. It doesn't seem like 10 weeks. It seems much longer. And we
like 10
have
years.
more like 10 years.
Yeah.
I really am. I take stock of this, and I'm we're standing here talking here, and over the last 10 weeks across our entire network, we've got a loan moratoria so that our school proprietors don't have to worry about repaying the loans. Right? We put that in place, made sure that their lines of credit are available, so what funding they need to keep the schools running. But then we didn't stop there from a financial services perspective. Our partners didn't. I mean, to the team's credit, you guys then went forward and you set up everything from Facebook Light pages for the teachers. You've developed a COVID-19 toolkit for the proprietors. So talk to us about a little bit about that. What's that been like of now engaging teachers and helping proprietors virtually? And you did all that very, very swiftly. I mean, for the different parts of opportunity, I think you guys were the first on. So tell us a bit about what you've done to help people now, and then let's talk about where do we go from here.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we normally on a normal day, and who knows if we'll get back to that exactly, that normalcy that we used to know, but we deliver an incredibly holistic program across many different sectors, and it's mostly delivered in person. And we knew that was no longer going to be possible, so we went back immediately, had a couple task force and rapid response meetings in terms of what are going to be the immediate needs of our partners, both our financial institution partners and our school partners. And we boiled it down to some very specific areas and started rapidly developing bite-sized pieces of content that we could deliver on multiple channels immediately, both to financial institutions and to our school owners. And so this is related to business planning and financial management in a crisis, staff retention, so ensuring that you're able to maintain those relationships so the teachers come back, and also the customer base, which is parents and students. So how to continue engagement and learning and ensure that the students come back to school. I think the most devastating piece of this, the most devastating outcomes of COVID would be that children don't go back to school and schools don't reopen. And that's like the main two things that we are trying to address with our COVID response. So our team came together and completely did a 180 shift in terms of how we engage, and using our relationships and the trust that we had built over the last several years with all of our partners and the channels that we had developed as well. So using every form of technology that we could, coming all the way from Facebook to SMS and one-on-one phone calls, to support them, even if it means just sitting there and listening to what they're facing that day. Because at the end of the day, that might be enough just to get them through, right? But also thinking about, what does your cash runway look like? Let's keep your business open. What's your next 3 months, 6 months, 12 months look like? What can you do? And then with that information, what kind of conversation do you need to have with your staff and your teachers? And then what conversation do you need to have with parents, right? And right now, everyone's facing challenges. Families have lost their jobs, right? They're not going to be able to pay school fees immediately. And so that needs to be an open, transparent, understanding conversation with the schools and figuring out what the best way forward is, because everyone's going to be struggling. So in the past, when someone doesn't pay, it might be a bit of a different conversation, but right now everybody is facing those same issues. And so it's, let's be open, let's be honest, let's negotiate, let's find a solution together. And so right now, I think the most important thing I think we've built over time are these really strong relationships that, they trusted us to come in, they trusted the content we were providing and the support that we were doing, really leveraging those relationships to come in their hour of need. And so we've kind of taken this as a week by week in terms of really assessing what the situation looks like. And instead of planning out for 12 months, 3 years, we're planning out for maybe a week to 4 weeks at a time, and continuing to be adaptive and shifting. We're beginning to actually see schools actually setting dates for reopening. So we're actually next week about to shift into the second phase of our work and help schools plan for reopening, which is going to be much harder than closing schools. And so that's what we're preparing for next.
So where do you go then? As you said, you're preparing for next. What happens? I mean, the post-COVID world, it's not clear at all.
Yeah.
Where we are, how will it shape? And we are 100% sure, more than 100%, whatever happens in the next 4 weeks, 14 weeks from now, it'll look different. Right? So where do we go from here? Especially in your space and sector, which is so vital. And if we have educated kids, we have safer moms, we have better households, we have more livelihoods, and eventually a better workforce and a local society that thrives. Where at the very, very bottom, the ingredient is these children. So what happens next?
Yeah, I mean, there's not a lot we know what the future will look like exactly, but we can plan as much for the unexpected as possible. We know that it's going to be incredibly complex. There's going to be a continuation of restrictions in place for school reopening, and that the new normal, we don't really know what that looks like yet, but we can start planning for it because we do know some things. We do know from previous experiences that there will be continued emphasis on creating safe learning spaces, healthy learning spaces. We know what the protocols are to prevent the spread of COVID-19. We know what kind of support that we can give to the schools to think about that, and we know that there's going to be a lot of psychosocial support that's need to be given. There's going to be stigma in a lot of the countries where we operate in. We know how to address some of these things, so we're starting to provide that support now. The silver lining is that whenever you're in a crisis, you learn. You especially learn about what you didn't do in advance to prepare for something like this, and you start to build back better. So we know that we need to build more flexible and more adaptive programs. We've heard from many school leaders that they didn't think that they felt they were prepared for this. They didn't know how to do financial planning in a crisis. So we're thinking about how we're actually going to reshape our program going forward to actually incorporate more crisis management, incorporate and formalize more elements that are going to support schools to really weather the storm and continue to be able to achieve their objectives. We're also thinking about how we can actually probably take a bit more risk in terms of the use of technology and things that we maybe felt less confident about using before. I think some of the biggest challenges, especially in a lot of the African countries where we work in, is just the limited, connectivity, the lack of will to really use technology as a learning tool. And we're actually hearing some of our, school owners telling us now that they understand the benefit and, wish they had invested more in this before. So I think a lot of the channels and a lot of the ways of communicating that we've had to resort to now, we might be able to use in the future. And a lot of our school owners might be more open to that, investing time and resources. So I think there's a lot of things which we can do from this experience to build back better on the other side and make sure our schools, have set up PTAs. So when they have crisis, they can call on these formalized structures to come in and support, board of governors for schools and all of these other formalized structures that are meant to support and meant to, collaborate and help people weather, crises, and so a lot of these elements we're considering for the long term, but of course there's still a lot of unknowns about what restrictions will be in place when schools reopen. What some of those things will look like will be very, very different in every single country. So again, we're planning for the next few weeks, and then after that we'll plan for the next few weeks, and then hope that things begin to normalize after some time. I think the one thing that gets me through this personally is thinking that this is temporary and things will change and there will be a new way of working that we can plan better for.
You're so right. I mean, I'm standing here listening to what you have to say, and what strikes me is what the team's done is take the basic ingredient which we've known for eons doesn't change is trusted relationships that you guys have built, and knowledge that has come from the street, right? I mean, you're in there on what I call the coalface, but at the same time, in this tremendously pressure cooker environment, you took processes that we'd evolved of quality improvement over years, and telescope them down into weeks of innovation, right? I mean, and you could do that because of who you guys are. So wow, I mean, hats off. You've taken relationships, you've taken your deep expertise, you've taken your own passion and commitment, and then you've brought in everybody from Silicon Valley to Main Street banks, and got them to focus on one single thing, which is how do you improve, how do you now get schools to survive, right? I hats off. I mean, that wow, we're talking about innovation that helps build SDGs, and talk about innovating in the COVID-19 pressure cooker. Welcome to the age of coronavirus.
COVID-19 pressure cooker. I like that one. I haven't heard that one yet. We've heard a lot of terms, unprecedented, uncertainty, new normal, but I like COVID-19 pressure cooker because I think it really talks to, what I've seen, especially with our team. And, I think this opens us up to an immense opportunity is the silver lining here, and how we really leverage that and try to create something that's better on the other side of this, I think is incredibly important.
Yeah, and you're so right. Is what are the best ideas that come out of the new ideas? Because that's how it's not just that's how people how we move forward. Is in these tremendous pressure cooker environments, the best ideas come, and then you get to sift them one way or the other very, very rapidly, and off you go. And in fact, even your Facebook like page for educators, well, that wouldn't have been something we normally did because we deliver our expertise in person. Yeah. And now you got educators from different countries partnering. Well, we never thought about that. How cool is that of an idea? So it's one of those, you kind of look at that and say, wow, we came out of this, but now we're stronger. In all this, though, I think the common thread, Renee, for us has been, and this goes back to our founding 50 years back, with a local partnership. Right, and we started as a local partnership between a group of visiting businessmen from all places, Chicago, Illinois, in at that time a remote town called Cali, Columbia, with a local church. Having a guy sitting on the street selling spices get a loan, and here we are, 17 million clients, 50 years, and billions of dollars, and now 6.8 million children in schools later. So the power of partnership has always powered us, and has, I believe, frankly, progressed humanity along in almost every sphere of life. If you're going to tackle these SDGs, which we are very committed to, we want to see a world where every child is able to go to school. We want to see a world where nobody goes to bed hungry. Everybody's got enough to eat. People are earning. There's nobody living on less than $2 a day or $1.97 left on the planet. Well, we know it's been set back, because of COVID-19. We know that we'll dial back. It breaks our hearts. But then we as well believe that it is innovation and the power of partnerships and people who will get us through this and over to the other side. Talk to me about some of those partnerships that you've seen that just come to mind, whether they are with a school proprietor, whether we're with your local team, with a financial partner. Bring to life what that partnership feels like to you.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about the 1,700 schools that we're currently working with across the globe, I think that, has been the most interesting and rewarding partnership that I've seen on my day-to-day, and schools stepping up and, engaging in channels and supporting each other across different countries. So as you mentioned, we set up these Facebook Lite groups. So Facebook Lite is a version of Facebook that works on a 2G network, very low bandwidth, low connectivity areas. And when we work with schools in a small group of 12 schools of their peers, now they're working on country level groups where they're, actually recording Facebook Live sessions and sharing their experience with other proprietors, engaging in conversations with others that they hadn't actually connected with before. And so we see those connections, those relationships that we've been seeding for so long really come into play and come into action when it was really greatly needed. And then we see a lot of these macro partnerships that, connect myself and my colleagues on the senior management team to learn from what others are doing in the sector, to get resources, both in knowledge, but also finance, to help us continue with what we're doing. Many of our, donor partners like the Elma Foundation and USAID have been incredibly helpful during this period. We know organizations like UNESCO, the World Bank have set out global guidelines on school reopening, safe school spaces that we've been able to pull on and adapt and contextualize for our local partners, our schools, our financial institutions. We've really been able to pull in a lot of these relationships, and we don't see anyone shying away despite everything that everyone is facing, both on a personal and professional level. People are making time, and that's pretty impressive. I think you meet a lot of people that really care in the sector, so it's great.
It truly is. I mean, it's quite a marvel, right? You've got Helena and Jackson, we spoke about earlier, your school proprietors, and over 15,000 of them around the world, and now in turn, and millions of parents. Well, partnering with them, and here we are, right? Almost like I think of ourselves, you and I, as a bridge of that partnership. On the one hand, then our organizations like Cisco that's provide digital technologies, Caterpillar that's provided funding, right? You've got Credit Suisse, for 10 years partnering with us. Elma, as you mentioned, Gates Foundation. It just is, it's just a tremendous, and then you've got 58 local banks that we partner, right? And people who never thought about education finance, till we introduce them in 28 countries, and innumerable local nonprofits. And to me, that is what's going to carry us forward. Yeah. Right. There is a African proverb that I was introduced to many years back that says that, and it's from the Swahili, but the English translation, that if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together.
Absolutely.
And that's a journey of going far, Renee, and you've come far, and I am convinced that we will go far. COVID-19 or nothing, we will go far, and we will, because that's what the human spirit is. And in that going far and going together, I want to just close with inviting everybody who's listening today or will listen, is write to us, talk to us. We are looking for partners. We are looking for ideas. The only way we have progressed is by listening to others, by building trusted relationships and bringing the power of partnership into that, and then putting into that pressure cooker, if I could use that word, innovation and expertise, very passionate, very committed people, Renee, like yourselves, Andrew. The list is long, and it's a good list and a proud list. But when you put all that together, progress happens, and we tackle complex humanitarian issues like the SDGs aim to tackle. So we live, and I do believe still today, even after COVID-19, we live in an age and a time that like no other. We talk about COVID-19, but frankly, if you take a step back, this is the first time that all of humanity got together to tackle a crisis. It's never happened before, right? You and I are standing on now 30 years of committed progress on humanitarian development goals. The lowest number of people living in extreme poverty, the highest number of students in the world, right? The lowest maternal deaths, the highest number of girls being educated. The age of marriage declining, the number of economic livelihood improving, all that has happened. And yes, today will pause us a bit, COVID will, but I don't think it'll stop us. So thank you, and write to us. Those of you who are listening, please write to Renee. Her LinkedIn and Twitter is on there. You can write to me at ceo@opportunity.org. You want to talk and learn more about Opportunity, go to our website, opportunity.org. And specifically, if you click on the education finance, sidebar, you will get to know a lot more about our education finance program, as well our work with the farmers, smallholder farmers across Africa and now Latin America, our ag finance program, and of course our many years of work in microbanking, bringing financial solutions to families to help them build businesses, earn a living, and get out of poverty. So thank you. I want to close by thanking George and the Ideagen team for hosting us and giving us this opportunity, and frankly holding this innovation summit. So I wish the team and everybody the very best. And for the viewers, I trust and hope this has been an exciting and engaging time, and that we will see you virtually on our screens. And when the planes start to fly again, if you will, and we start to travel in the streets in Kampala and Nairobi and Accra and elsewhere. So till then, bye for now. And Renee, thank you so much. I know you're waiting for the restrictions to be lifted to catch the first flight back.
Back to Uganda, yeah, very much so.
And I wish I'll be able to join you, but look forward to that too. Yeah. Bye for now. Thanks, everybody.
Take care.
Thank you.